All right, everyone. I hope that you are well. I realize that this video is a day late. And so if you've been following along and catching it on Mondays, and you've noticed that it didn't change over this past week or this past day, like it normally would have, you were right. I was the one who was delaying here. I've been recording these videos on Mondays and then posting them. This Monday, I was distracted by all the things for Charge Conference, and so it just got pushed back a day. So I apologize, but thank you for your patience and willingness to kind of hang in there with me as we are learning together how to do this online format. I've mainly only heard from Patricia Bassett. I know that a few others have talked about reading the book and have watched a few of the videos, so I don't know who else is reading along with us and watching these videos, but if you are, I'd love for you to let me know. Maybe I should have put a form out or something so that I can contact everyone individually and make sure that you're all coming along. But Patricia, thank you for commenting. I saw yours down below. I'm going to respond to that soon, and anyone else who'd like to give that a shot. It's not that difficult, and I think you only have to sign in one time. After that, it saves your sign-in information, and you can have any discussion you'd like down below in the chat or in the comment section. Anyway, hey, listen, so of course, working through the book here that you should be pretty familiar with at this point, The Attentive Life by Leighton Ford. We are now, what chapter are we in? I guess we're in chapter 3, talking about daybreak, the prayer of the lauds, which come just before dawn, as the first light begins to finger into the day, as Leighton Ford writes. Patricia Bassett mentioned that she likes watching these videos after she's read the chapter. I think that probably makes more sense. Like I said, I'm learning how to do this, and so some of you may watch this video before you read, some may watch it after. I really am just offering some reflections here on the book, so it doesn't matter to me kind of whatever order works best for you. Just work that out and get back to me, because like I said, I'd love to have any conversation with you guys that are willing to have it with me. As I was reading through this text, through this chapter, I was thinking about some of the differences between the vigils, which happen at 3 a.m., and lauds, which again happens just before dawn or right at dawn as the day breaks in. And as a Wesleyan, I can't help but to connect at least these parts of the prayers to Wesley's picture of the process of grace, that is this ongoing work of God that is at work in us at all times, when we're aware of it and when we're not aware of it. And then we become, so when we're not aware of it, then eventually we become aware of it. And this is the process of salvation. And for some, it happens in a moment. This is a lot of what Leighton Ford is talking about in this book, is how sometimes that testimony of your salvation happens quickly. In a moment, you come down to the altar and your life is changed. That was not my experience. I grew up going to the church. My dad was a pastor. When I was 18, I remember when I joined a Baptist church, I wanted to be sure to have the Baptist minister ask me the question, Josh, do you know Jesus to be your Lord and Savior? Because I don't know that I had ever publicly said it so succinctly before, and not of my own volition and free will. And so that was an important moment for me, but it represented maybe the cap of a long process of me trying to determine whether or not this faith was mine on my own. And so daybreak represents for me this coming awake moment, this process of salvation, where you begin to become aware of the work that God has already been doing for you and in your life. As I was thinking about this coming awake to the voice of God, I was reminded of 1 Samuel chapter 3, when the Lord calls Samuel. I want you to hear these words out of 1 Samuel chapter 3, verses, 1 through 14 or something like that. The boy Samuel ministered before the Lord under Eli. In those days, the word of the Lord was rare. There was not many visions. One night, Eli, whose eyes were becoming so weak that he could barely see, was lying down in his usual place. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the house of the Lord, where the ark of God was. And then the Lord called Samuel, and Samuel answered, "Here I am." And he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me." But Eli said, "I did not call. Go back and lie down." And so Samuel went and lay down. Again the Lord called, "Samuel." And Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me." "My son," Eli said, I did not call. Go back and lie down." And now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. And a third time the Lord called, "Samuel." And Samuel got up and he went to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me." I like to think of this it's like, tapping somebody on the other side of the shoulder and then jumping, and they're wondering who tapped me. This is what the Lord is doing, calling Samuel's name. And then Eli, the third time, he realized that the Lord was calling the boy. So Eli told Samuel, "Go and lie down, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" And so Samuel went and lay down in his place. And then the Lord came and stood there, calling, as at the other times, "Samuel, Samuel." And then Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening." And the Lord said to Samuel, "See, I am about to do something in Israel that will make the ears of everyone who hears about it tingle." And the Lord goes on to call Samuel to be a very important person for the kingdom of Israel. I share all of this because I think that I am reminded of this story as we reflect on the nature of daybreak, as the nature of lauds, as we've seen written about here in our text. And this is a moment where Samuel was literally waking up to the voice of the Lord, but he didn't know how to listen. It took Eli 3 times, but the third time, it took Eli to discern for Samuel what was actually happening. And so Eli says to Samuel, "Listen, neither of us have been paying attention. You haven't known how to pay attention. Here is how you do it. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." Right? 6 words. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. This is, in part, what it means to pay attention, is to realize the source of the voice that is trying to speak to you in your daily life. The gift of daybreak, the gift of a sun that rises again and again and again and again, once each day, is a gift that represents our ability to reflect those 6 words that Samuel eventually says, "Speak, Lord, your servant is listening." And once he does, the Lord begins to tell him some very good news, something very special and important for the kingdom of Israel. I think the Lord does something very similar for us in our lives as we repeat those words that Samuel has said, yes, even every single day, as we wake up and say, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." I say when you wake up because my expectation is that many of you, like me, are probably going to be sleeping through the vigils. I think that's a very special way of acknowledging the work of the Lord that's happening throughout all the hours of the night. But I don't expect you all to follow the Benedictine order of hours in your lives. I expect you to follow the order of hours as they're set about throughout culture's daily life, where our days typically begin at around sunrise, some shortly after, some shortly before, some right at. But the reality is that these are markers, these moments in the day, these hours of prayer, they're markers for ways in which we can become awake and attentive to the work of God every single day. I've written down just a few words that I wanted to mention to you guys as I'm reflecting back on this book. And like I said, Patricia mentioned that reading the book and then listening to these videos is the better way for her to do it. It's probably the better way for all of us to do it. I'm just learning. So I've written down a few words of reflection. The first is salvation, which is what it means to become awake for us. We all, as Christians, have come awake to our salvation at one point or another. The second word that I've written is early images of God. And this was really interesting to me because this is not a reflection that I have done very often, is to consider what are some of my earliest images of God. Now, his images were prayer bench. One of my images of God is a canoe. Our church bought 6 canoes, and we would take those canoes down the Oconee River. And that represented the church for me, going camping on a sandbar and canoeing, paddling out 30 miles down the Oconee River. That was a picture of church for me. And then that was a picture of the way in which God worked for us. I have other images of God that are connected to the way my parents raised me, and you likely do too. And it doesn't always have to be a positive image of God. It's just to say that these are the images of God that we have received early on in our lives, and we carry those images with us. And there are times when maybe we have to sacrifice those images and say, this is less than holy. I'm going to give this up so that the Lord can restore a true image, a true icon of himself before me. And the interesting thing about the image of God, that wording, that language, it's been given to us in Genesis chapter 1, that we have each been given the image of God, is that language in Hebrew actually represents the same word that we use as idol. And so when the Lord says that you have been made as an image of God or in the image of God, this is to say that you are actually God's image. People, every one of us, I am, the people that are watching this, we have all been made as these idols of God. We are these pictures of God. And this is the importance of not creating idols down the road, is we've already been created as God's idols. And we are working to restore that image within us. Sometimes the images that have been handed to us are toxic. They're not good. And we need to pay attention to what those images are and consider the ways in which those earliest memories do impact our faith. Another word that and I think I've reflected on this, but another word that I circled here on page 69, and it's in italics, so it's kind of an easy grab, is the word preoccupation. That term describes inattentiveness very well. A space, whether a house or a mind, that is preoccupied, is so crowded that it has little space for anything else to enter. So I'm not curious about your occupation, but I am curious about your preoccupation. What are some things that you are allowing to preoccupy your mind before the day even begins? I know that for me, my preoccupation in the morning is my kids and school and the stuff of work and just all the things that are on my mind that crowd out those first words that I can give to God. Another word that I circled, again in italics on page 73, is somehow from somewhere a yes was spoken in my heart. This is one of the things that Leighton Ford is writing in his own moment of reflection of waking up to the work of God that was kind of alive in him and around him. I oftentimes talk about our yes to God because I think that we have to agree to what God is doing in our lives. But that is a mirror reflection of God's yes to us. And I don't ever want to overshadow that or take that for granted. that yes, a lot of our work as people is saying yes to God, but we say yes to God because God has already said yes to us. I know I'm jumping right through here, but I wanted to mention one last thing as I am offering this reflection, which is a prayer that I really love. In fact, I think I'm going to use this prayer on Sunday. Prayer is like watching for the kingfisher. Prayer is like watching for the kingfisher, page 77. All you can do is be there where he is like to appear and wait. Often nothing much happens. There is space, silence, and expectancy. No visible signs, only the knowledge that he's been there and may come again. Seeing or not seeing cease to matter. You have been prepared. But when you've almost stopped, expecting it, a flash of brightness gives encouragement. I believe that this is a very accurate reflection of what it's like to wait on God morning by morning. We live in the evidence of God's existence, but we don't always see it at the moment. And sometimes when we've begun to least expect it, God shows up and does something special for us. I pray that for you, as you've been working through this book, that you are beginning to see the pattern of attentiveness that Leighton Ford and the Benedictines have been doing for a long time, that wakes us up to the work of God, that is activating us and calling us out. First, calling us out to others, but that is first activating us to the presence of God that is right here and right now. Blessings. Again, sorry this is on Tuesday, but it happened as it did. I will work to get the next one out on Monday. Until then, hello, goodbye. I'd love to hear your reflections down in the comment section below. See you.